The days in the cold aren't as good for my body as I'd thought. If Ivan won't succeed, then the weather will get you at some point. Ever since we arrived at the fallback position, I'm doing worse from day to day. Nevertheless, of course, I don't want to skip out from duty here. I continue to go on my watch and fulfill the daily duty. But that's not good for me. It gets worse from day to day. All of a sudden, my legs give out and I'm lying on my back. My comrades take me to the infirmary. The doctor diagnoses a severe cold. On top of that, I've apparently contracted a virus, which is not treated in time with medication, could end fatally. After 2 days in the infirmary, I'm being transferred in the direction of Kharkiv. There a large field hospital had been established, and our medical sergeant remarks I'd have to remain there for a couple of weeks until I was completely fit for duty again. Well, said and done. That way it's going by medical train far behind the front. Quite pleasant to be traveling lying down, if only the body wasn't so tired. Frequently I'm lying in a dazed condition and don't know where I am. Finally, the military hospital, which is set up for almost 100 men, it's slowly getting better. Nevertheless, I'm almost unable to get up, and I'm glad that finally, after 4 days, I'm able to go to the bathroom again by myself. The recovery process occurs gradually, despite which I hope to be back on my feet quickly. But in spite of taking it easy and keeping quiet, it's taking its time. When the doctor keeps examining me over and over again, I ask him why it was taking so long. He explained to me that if I hadn't been in such good shape, I probably would long have died. The virus was quite rare and difficult to fight, but somehow I was lucky and had managed to elude death once again. There, one can participate in 100 battles and nothing happens. Along comes a disease and it can all be over. When I'm able to sit up in bed again, I become familiar with the other comrades in the bedroom. They are all veterans of the Eastern Front who have been in front of the enemy for a long time. Weather-worn faces who have seen quite a bit, but nevertheless never lose their sense of humor. Playing cards, the most hair-raising stories are being told. Some are so incredible, one could think this really couldn't possibly be true. One of the infantry soldiers tells a story from the vicinity of Stalingrad, so outside of the cauldron, where the Romanians had attempted to stop the Russian tanks. Since their own vehicles had already been put out of commission, the soldiers attacked the tanks with Molotov cocktails and hand grenades. With the courage of desperation, he witnessed the Romanian comrades jump on top of the tanks in order to stop them. A heavy blood toll was paid when the Romanians were shot down in droves by the following Russian tanks. But the Russians also had to bleed. At the end of the attack, the Romanians had lost 42 men and knocked out 7 T-34s. Was that the courage of desperation, or did they want to prove to the German comrades that they, too, could fight courageously? Another tells about a very young loader of an anti-tank gun crew who, after everyone at the cannon had been injured, stayed with the anti-tank gun to the last and kept up the fire on the Russian tanks and infantry. When the Russians withdraw, he took care of his men and bandaged up the wounded. He then collected the ammunition from the damaged artillery pieces. The following morning the Russians attempted anew, and he managed a second time to repel the assault. Already wounded himself, he remained in the gun emplacement for another 24 hours until relief finally arrived and the wounded were recovered. A total of 11 smoldering enemy tanks were sitting on the battlefield. Another anti-tank gun was restored to cooperation. His own artillery piece he handed over to a non-commissioned officer. Then finally he was brought to the rear and treated. With heroic courage and defying death, he had saved the rearward sector from being overrun. This surely resulted in a tin necktie for the comrade. But tragedies from the civilian population are also being told. Of families who weren't able to flee any longer and out of fear of the Germans had sent themselves and their entire families to the death. But the other side is also told that villagers actually cheered when German vehicles arrived. It's told of little children without parents who were living in rags in the small towns and who had to steal the bare necessities for the day. Of women who offered their body in order to somehow ensure survival. Bad things that happen behind the front, but the worst are the stories about partisans. There I can also tell a few stories. The days are passing by very slow, one hasn't got a whole lot to do. I then start my rounds through the hospital mornings, noontime and evening to get my circulation going. These walks also led me to the 4th floor where the officers were being treated. One day I hear loud screaming in the hallway, stop and listen by the open door. A soldier is apparently yelling at the nurses and caregivers. What it is about, I cannot understand. I carefully peek around the corner, and as I see who's there causing a ruckus, I almost get hit by a stroke. Everything comes back into my head. The bridge, the motorcycle, Ferdi, the field car, the drunken lieutenant. And there he is now, lying in his sickbed, the bastard, yelling at the good souls in the hospital, possibly over something trivial. I sneak back away from this floor again. It probably wouldn't be prudent to be seen here. Deep in thoughts, I sit on my sickbed and contemplate what there is to do. Perhaps sneak up to him at night and break the damn guy's neck? No, that wouldn't be the right way. Then I would be like him, a murderer. But I have to do something. My night is marked by nightmares. Drenched in sweat, I wake up several times during the night, and I'm like having been wrecked the next morning. I wander again through the big house and avoid going to the 4th floor. But then I do catch it as the nurses vent about the screamer in the offices area. Carefully, I try to hear the ladies out. But except for the information that the officers up there like to occasionally have drinks and play cards together, nothing interesting comes to light. But maybe this is the approach to pay back the bastard. So I wait until those upstairs are once again indulging themselves with alcohol. I hide in the vicinity of the lounge and wait. In the evening, the first lieutenant with 2 comrades is walking back to his room on crutches. They are all no longer sober. As my father always used to say, revenge likes to be served cold. Therefore, I practice patience, and 2 days later, things are flying high upstairs again. After a while, the bastard apparently has got enough and is more or less walking back on crutches to his room. Here he also has to climb down a small flight of stairs with 5 steps to get back to his floor. I sneak behind him, and as he is getting ready to take the first step down with the crutches, I shove him down the stairs and take off. Since he's drunk anyway, he could have simply fallen, and the fall most likely won't kill him. Running away, I heard a loud thud and then a long scream, so he's still alive. I sneak into my hospital room and crawl under my blanket. Of course, a few soldiers in the bedroom have caught on that I've been on the way, but none of them will tell on me. The next morning, of course, the drunken first lieutenant is a topic of conversation in every corner of the military hospital. He's broken a leg, the poor fellow, and he's got a long cut on his face. Possibly he'd been carrying a bottle, or the steps had metal corners. Doesn't matter to me, I'm thieveishly exhilarated over it. Now I just have to make it out of the hospital without him seeing me. Then everything will be dandy. 2 days later, I'm finally attested to be fit for frontline duty again. Unfortunately, there won't be any home leave, so I'm being sent in March to my unit. The first lieutenant I did not see anymore, but I still heard that he had likely received a severe punishment for his actions and the drunkenness there. Well, in this case, Berlin hadn't been able to help him. Now all this won't bring Ferdy back to life, but at least I was able to pay back some. Now I also have his name and unit. I will pay more attention to it now. Possibly I will someday run into him at the front. I'm able to catch a ride and get on my way to the fallback position. The past 2 weeks we've been able to hold our own, and we are able to hold back the Russians pushing ahead. It appears as if Ivan has shot up his powder and first needs to catch his breath for now. The next day I report back to duty, and I'm joyfully greeted by Schmidt and Hans, the rabbit. Hans probably tells that he was awarded the Iron Cross second class. The T-34 story was really a brave affair. I probably wouldn't have done that. The machine guns of the T-34 would have been too dangerous. But in the unfordable tank terrain, the tanker certainly hadn't spotted Hans. Otherwise, it never would have worked. One always says that the brave one is only courageous for 5 seconds longer than the coward. That's the difference. My comrades tell that we've received new tanks. Once again, also 4 long-barreled tanks. I hope that I finally be able to get one. Unfortunately, we already have a new unit commander again. Captain Falkens has fallen as well, and now we received an old first lieutenant who had been severely wounded in France as a tanker. One arm is stiff and an eye is missing, but apparently he is a good troop leader. I do hope to receive a Panzer IV long, but with the tanks come also new commanders. That will probably be business as usual. The new guys will get old tank gunners who will give them a leg up. A young lieutenant is introduced to me and he explains to me that I'll become his gunner. Of course, I'd very much like to ride as commander, but as a gunner in a long barrel, I do want that by all means. The remaining crew are put together. We all know each other from various missions. Hermann also appears to be on the way to recovery again. The Sarge states that he'd probably be back to the troop in 4 weeks. Well then, let's get out our new tank. I asked the lieutenant what he liked to name the new tank. He suggests Rosinante. I can't hold back a grin. So he doesn't have a girl yet, therefore the name for sure. But why not? He's the commander and he decides. Therefore, Rosinante it is. I kinda like it, but I still have to explain to the driver where in history the name appears. The next days we undertake a few training missions with a new tank since it's still quite at the front. A shooting segment is also performed in order for us to readjust the optics once again. But it all fits so far. The busy workers in the Reich have once again delivered us an immaculate vehicle to the front. Soon it's a go again. I can hardly wait to ride against Ivan again.